Have you ever wondered why some women seem to drift in and out of relationships, as if guided by a force unseen, yet leave behind traces of longing, confusion, or quiet defiance? In the shadows of their psyche, Carl Jung would say, there lies a landscape where desire, fear, and self-worth entwine, a place where the feminine unconscious navigates not only the world of love, but the labyrinth of her own becoming. What she seeks is never merely a partner, it is recognition of the parts of herself she has long denied, fragments buried beneath societal expectation, childhood imprint, and the quiet echoes of past heartbreak. A woman's heart is not a simple container of affection. It is an archetypal vessel where the anima and ego dance, where projection often distorts perception. When a woman steps into a relationship, she does not merely search for comfort or security. She tests the waters of her own shadow, often unconsciously, to see who can hold her light without extinguishing it. Many men fail to understand that resistance, hesitation, or sudden withdrawal is not a rejection of love itself, but a profound defense against losing the self in the pursuit of another's approval. In these moments, the Stoics would remind us the soul's value cannot be measured by external validation. She knows, deep down, that attachment without discernment is the gateway to suffering, and she navigates the terrain of intimacy with both courage and caution. Consider this. A woman's silence is often louder than any confession. It is in the quiet, in the space where words fail, that true evaluation occurs, an appraisal not of what a man says, but of who he is, how he meets her essence, and whether he respects her emerging self. Trauma, societal expectation, and past betrayal layer themselves upon instinct, producing reactions that seem enigmatic but are profoundly self-protective. When a woman pulls back, it is frequently not the distance from another that she seeks, but the proximity to herself, the reclamation of a voice too often silenced by compromise. In these psychological currents, one begins to see why traditional relationship rules collapse. A woman's desire is not to conform, but to align with the truth of her inner world. Imagine this. You're watching a woman navigate the world of relationships with the quiet intensity of a storm gathering on the horizon. Her choices are deliberate, yet seemingly unpredictable, for she is guided by an internal compass that few can decipher. Jung would describe this as the interplay between the conscious ego and the unconscious feminine, where instincts, past impressions, and unacknowledged desires converge. To understand her, one must first recognize that attraction is not merely about charm or appearance. It is an intricate dialogue between projected shadows and mirrored selves. Every hesitation, every glance, every withdrawal is a reflection of something she perceives within herself as much as in the other. Women often approach intimacy with a dual consciousness, the yearning for connection and the imperative of self-preservation. Beneath the surface, many carry echoes of unhealed wounds, threads of abandonment, and internalized judgments that shape how they allow love to enter. Stoic philosophy whispers here, control what you can, accept what you cannot. A woman exercises this principle unconsciously, measuring each encounter against the standard of her evolving self-worth. She is attuned not only to words, but to energies, to the subtle incongruences that reveal true intentions. In this psychic environment, a man's neediness or coercion becomes a red flag, not merely an annoyance. It signals an attempt to eclipse her autonomy, to fill a void he alone projects. Yet she knows that authentic love cannot survive such imbalance.
Yet paradoxically, her emotional complexity is often misread as indecision or manipulation. The truth is, she is discerning, not capricious. She seeks resonance over convenience, depth over superficiality. Jung would argue that in every woman exists a shadow, the unacknowledged parts of her personality, which she tests against the external world. A partner who triggers anxiety, jealousy, or withdrawal is not inherently flawed. He is a mirror reflecting her own unresolved tensions. Emotional intelligence, therefore, becomes the key. To love her is to understand not only her conscious desires, but the intricate, often turbulent currents that shape them. Only then can one approach a relationship as a balanced exchange of authenticity, where neither ego dominates nor soul retreats. Some women, more than others, move through relationships like dancers tracing patterns only they can see, steps guided by intuition sharpened through experience, pain, and reflection. They are acutely aware that attachment without awareness is a surrender of the self. Jung would describe this as the individuation process, the journey toward becoming whole, which in love requires constant negotiation between the ego's desires and the deeper currents of the unconscious. When a woman hesitates, withdraws, or even challenges a partner, it is often a signal of this inner work, a refusal to allow another to dictate her rhythm, a conscious or unconscious insistence that her essence be honored. Consider the role of projection, a force both subtle and potent. In relationships, a man may find himself loved, admired, or suddenly rejected without clear cause. The explanation often lies not in him, but in her own inner landscape. She projects onto him fragments of her own shadow, testing whether he can reflect back a secure, unthreatening mirror, or whether he will falter under the weight of her depth. The reactions she elicits are not arbitrary. They are invitations to meet her at the level of authenticity she has cultivated, or to reveal the limitations of one's own consciousness. Those who fail to understand this dynamic mistake caution for coldness, discernment for disinterest, and self-respect for emotional unavailability. Yet for her, every interaction is a subtle experiment in alignment. Does this connection honor her growth, or does it demand compromise at the expense of her evolving self? It is here that trauma's influence emerges, often unconsciously. Past betrayals, dismissals, or neglect shape expectations, heightening sensitivity to incongruence or subtle imbalance. But these patterns are not obstacles, they are signals, markers of the boundaries she has learned to protect. Stoic wisdom reminds us that external circumstances cannot dictate inner equilibrium. A woman who has cultivated awareness of her intrinsic value knows that no affection, attention, or validation from another can replace her own recognition of self-worth. This is the paradox of feminine strength. It manifests as grace, patience, and receptivity, yet is underpinned by an unwavering insistence on autonomy and integrity. Do you know how many women quietly observe before committing, weighing not only words, but the consistency of character, the alignment of values, the resonance of energies? Their evaluation is silent, yet meticulous, an unconscious litmus test rooted in both instinct and reflection. Jung would call this the interplay of conscious discernment with the deep currents of the feminine unconscious, where desires and fears entwine in subtle, often invisible ways. She notices contradictions, emotional inconsistencies, and the faintest traces of ego projection, all while maintaining the appearance of composure.
To misread this is to mistake vigilance for coldness or independence for disinterest. Yet she moves with purpose, never to surrender her essence, only to recognize a partner capable of holding it. A woman's emotional intelligence is her compass. She can sense when attention is authentic or performative, when affection is nourishing or suffocating. She is drawn not to the mere presence of power or confidence, but to integrity, to those rare men who confront their own shadows rather than imposing them. Many relationships fail not because of incompatibility in taste or attraction, but because one or both parties lack the courage to face the mirrored truth. Her silence, her pauses, her selective openness are not obstacles. They are invitations to rise to a higher level of self-awareness and emotional accountability. Marcus Aurelius would note here, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. A woman attuned to her inner world will not allow another to tint her essence with mediocrity or compromise. And yet, beneath this guarded strength, there lies longing, not for validation, nor for the drama of romantic ideal, but for communion with someone who sees and respects the totality of her being. She seeks a partnership where shadow work is mutual, where growth is reciprocal, and where each encounter is an exploration of depth rather than a performance of superficiality. This is why her decisions may appear enigmatic. They are guided not by whim, but by the invisible threads of instinct, past experience, and conscious individuation. In every glance, withdrawal, or embrace, she negotiates the delicate balance between intimacy and self-preservation, attachment and autonomy. If a man truly wishes to understand a woman's approach to relationships, he must first recognize that her world is not shaped by fleeting desire or societal scripts. It is sculpted by the continuous dialogue between shadow and light within her psyche. Every action she takes, every boundary she sets, is a reflection of this inner landscape. She evaluates not only who a man is, but who she is becoming in his presence. Jung would argue that a relationship acts as a mirror, revealing both unacknowledged wounds and untapped potential. To love her is to witness the interplay of her past, her fears, and her aspirations, without attempting to dominate, fix, or contain them. Her independence is not rebellion, it is preservation. She has learned, sometimes painfully, that surrendering prematurely leads to dissolution of self, and that attachment without awareness is fertile ground for resentment. Stoic philosophy echoes here. One must cultivate inner resilience, embrace personal virtue, and recognize that true fulfillment originates from within. A woman aware of her value will test, probe, and even challenge a partner, not out of malice, but to measure the depth of his presence, the steadiness of his character, and his willingness to engage honestly with both her light and her darkness. Those who approach her with superficial charm or coercive affection will find only resistance. Those who meet her with authenticity and courage may discover a profound connection rarely experienced. Yet emotional depth comes with paradox. The same woman who radiates warmth and compassion can retreat suddenly, leaving confusion in her wake. This is not inconsistency, it is the reflection of her ongoing negotiation with internal and external forces. Trauma, unhealed wounds, and societal pressures may shape her reactions, but they do not define her. She navigates the interplay of desire and self-respect, seeking a space where intimacy is an exchange of whole selves rather than a surrender of identity. In these moments, the masculine ego encounters a challenge to accept her as an autonomous being, to witness without judgment, and to cultivate patience alongside courage. Ultimately, her choices in love are a testament to the rigorous inner work she has undertaken. Every pause, every boundary, every test is an assertion that she will not compromise her essence for fleeting comfort. She seeks resonance, authenticity, and a partnership that honors the totality of her being. The man who fails to see this will perceive only indecision or aloofness. The man who grasps it will recognize the rare opportunity for connection on a profoundly conscious level. Some women carry within them an almost sacred sense of timing, an intuitive awareness that love cannot be rushed, and that the unfolding of a relationship must honor the pace of the soul. This timing is not arbitrary. It is informed by an intricate blend of experience, shadow work, and the conscious cultivation of self-worth. Jung would suggest that she moves in accordance with the archetypal rhythm of reanima, responding not only to external gestures, but to the internal resonance of her own psyche. When she hesitates, it is not hesitation for its own sake. It is discernment, a measure of whether a connection supports her individuation or threatens it. Her desires are often misunderstood. She does not simply seek affection or validation, she seeks alignment. The partner she chooses must engage with her as a whole being, not merely the persona presented to the world. She senses the presence of ego projection, the unconscious tendency to see in another what one wishes to see, and responds accordingly. A man's bravado, charm, or even wealth cannot substitute for the subtle qualities she seeks: integrity, self-awareness, and the ability to confront personal shadows without defensiveness. Stoic thought resonates here. External trappings are transient, but virtue and self-mastery endure. A woman guided by these principles prioritizes depth over superficiality, and she measures connection not by immediate gratification, but by its capacity to nurture growth. Yet beneath this rigorous discernment lies vulnerability, often hidden, sometimes unacknowledged. To love and to allow oneself to be loved requires courage, a willingness to face not only another's truth, but one's own. Past experiences, betrayals, and societal pressures shape her expectations and sensitivities, but they do not diminish her capacity for profound connection. Rather, they sharpen her awareness, heighten her discernment, and strengthen her boundaries. She learns that true intimacy is not a dissolution of self, but a meeting of two whole beings who acknowledge each other's shadows as well as their light. In this delicate dance between attraction and self-preservation, she tests, observes, and evaluates, always returning to the core question: does this relationship honor the person I am becoming? Her silences are intentional, her gestures meaningful, and her choices reflective of a psyche in continuous dialogue with itself. For those who can recognize and respect this inner complexity, a woman's love becomes a profound and transformative experience, a mirror reflecting both challenge and beauty, both restraint and liberation. Most women, when they finally embrace love without compromise, reveal a quiet but formidable strength. It is not the strength of domination or insistence, but the strength of self-possession, the understanding that emotional freedom is earned, not granted. Jung would describe this as the culmination of individuation, where the ego no longer fears the shadow, but integrates it, recognizing the wholeness of the psyche. In a relationship, she approaches not with neediness, but with choice, not with dependency, but with presence. Her heart becomes a sanctuary, a space where only authenticity is allowed and where superficiality or coercion is naturally repelled. Attachment, for her, is a conscious decision rather than a reflexive habit. She understands that true intimacy requires courage, the courage to reveal vulnerability without fear of exploitation, the courage to witness another's shadow without judgment, and the courage to withdraw when alignment cannot be found. Modern psychology echoes this principle. Women who cultivate self-worth and emotional resilience are far less likely to settle for relationships that diminish them. Trauma-informed awareness reinforces the idea that boundaries are not walls, they are maps guiding interactions that honor the self. She knows that love cannot thrive in an environment of compromise that negates her essence. There is also an almost mystical element to the way she evaluates connection. Energy, subtle cues, consistency of actions, and congruence between words and behavior, all these become part of a silent calculus. She measures whether a man's presence expands her consciousness or constrains it, whether his intentions align with authenticity or projection. To misunderstand this is to mistake depth for indecision and discernment for coldness. Yet within her discernment lies a generosity. When a connection is aligned, when mutual respect and growth are present, she can give herself fully, without reservation, embodying a partnership that transcends conventional notions of romantic attachment. Ultimately, the woman who has traveled the terrain of her own psyche emerges into relationships with clarity and sovereignty. She does not chase, plead, or compromise her essence for fleeting comfort. Instead, she radiates an inner authority that attracts connection aligned with her growth, strength, and authenticity. Her love, once reserved, becomes a powerful force of mutual transformation, reflecting both freedom and depth. In the end, she is unshakable, a living testament to the principle that only those who meet her in truth can walk beside her in partnership. A woman who understands her own worth moves through relationships with a rare combination of presence and detachment. She has learned that neediness corrodes connection, while clarity and self-possession create it. Jung would argue that her capacity to love fully is inseparable from her commitment to individuation, the ongoing integration of conscious and unconscious elements of her psyche. In practice, this means she does not seek validation through another, but rather encounters others from a place of wholeness. Every choice she makes, every boundary she sets, is an assertion that her essence is non-negotiable. This awareness transforms the very dynamics of attraction. She is drawn to men who are similarly committed to self-mastery, who confront their own shadows rather than projecting them outward. Emotional games, manipulation, or performative gestures hold no sway over her. She discerns not only what is said, but what is felt, what is consistent, and what resonates with integrity. In this way, the relationship becomes a mirror, revealing not only the truth of the other, but also the continued evolution of herself. She recognizes that love is both a challenge and a reward, and that its depth is measured not by comfort alone, but by authenticity, courage, and mutual growth. Even in moments of solitude, she is complete. Solitude is not emptiness, but a space for reflection, healing, and alignment. She knows that only by honoring her inner world can she fully engage with another's. Stoic wisdom underscores this. The soul must not be dependent on externals, and happiness is cultivated within. Her emotional freedom is not a defense mechanism, but a conscious practice. She does not settle for what is convenient or familiar, She seeks the rare connection that mirrors the depth of her being. Those who understand this see her not as aloof, but as profoundly sovereign, a woman whose love is measured, intentional, and transformative. Ultimately, her presence is both a challenge and an invitation. She asks that a man meet her at the level of truth, courage, and integrity. She does not bend to expectation, nor does she dilute her light for acceptance. In relationships, she exemplifies a principle both timeless and radical. Love is not about possession, but about alignment. Not about fear, but about freedom. Her strength lies not in control, but in awareness. Not in demand, but in discernment. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.
If you want to explore the depths of the human mind and the psychology of love and self-discovery, hit the subscribe button. Every video is a journey into understanding yourself and others more profoundly.